Yep. So today we will see how we can work with that application, right? We can see how we can deal and work with that Angular application. Right. So the basic architecture I already told you yesterday, and let's start working with this. But in order to work with Angular application, you need to understand some more basic points, some more options in your application actually, some more options in the application. So let's open our project. So let's start the project here. And this is our project's workspace. And in the workspace, we created Amazon, that is a project. And in that Amazon project, we discussed about this infrastructure. So what are the folders we are having and all. Now let's go into the concept of how we can work with that. So now all our project related resources are defined in SRC. So SRC. So they are defined in SRC folder. So SRC comprises of all project resources. Now what we need to know is in that SRC, what are the key concepts? So what are available in that SRC? You can see this is the SRC folder available. And in the SRC, you have options. Let's take a close look here. We have app, assets, environments, and some important files are there. You need to know about these files also. So these are the files we need to know, and these are also important. So that is the reason understanding the architecture of Angular application, it will take some time. So immediately you cannot start practice without knowing all these, basically, actually. Later, what I will do is I will show you how to create an empty project and keep only the files that we need for a basic level application and start working with it. That process also I will show you. But finally, our application at a high level should contain all this, right? So we are going to see now about about application source files. Application source files. Source files. We are going to see about the application source files. So what are the application source files and what is their role? Actually, application source files are present in SRC. That means those are the files in SRC folder. Files in SRC folder. The files in SRC folder. So what is present inside a SRC folder and what are those? Let's take a look. So here, let's see what they are available. You can see we call them technically we call them as app support files. App support files, right? And what is their purpose? let's see what are the app support files and what are the purpose of these files. You can see here in SRC there is an app folder. First one, we have app folder. We have an app folder. Actually, this contains the component files in which your application logic and data are defined. It contains the component files in which your application logic and data are defined. So all your you can detailedly say that. So this is the location where we save. Actually, this is the location where we have. You can define components. You can define components, modules, services, pipes, routing, etc. Everything is configured in this area. What are pipes? What is routing? You will learn later. So your application related logic is present inside this app folder. That is the app folder you can see first. In this app folder, one more file is important for us. We will discuss. So this is app folder. Application related source files are present in this app folder. We have assets folder. Actually, it comprises of non-dynamic files. Dynamic files like images, text documents, text PDF, and other static files. Non-dynamic files means all static files are present. Static files means don't think about HTML. We generally should say static resources. What is meant by non-dynamic? Non-dynamic means these are the files which can be used without compiling them, without processing them. Without compiling, without processing, we can directly use them in our application. If it is a dynamic file, it needs to be compiled, translated, processed, then used. If you want to keep your images, if you want to keep your text, PDF documents and other static resources, so in your project, then you can keep in this assets folder. Assets contains that. So another very important, environments. Actually, environments is a folder which contains the build information, which contains build configuration about build configuration options for particular target environment. That means target environment like development environment, so production environment, environment, all such details are configured there. That means generally, so what are the compilers to use? So what are the tools to use for development, for production? All those configurations are defined inside these environments. So you can see environments contains a TS file. This is, are you developing for production environment? False. If you are developing for production environment, then how we can configure? So is it for development? Is it for production? We have to configure that. We need to add some rules for that. for which environment currently you are designing. You can see, so we have an option prod.ts. This is for production environment. This is for development environment. These all things you will come to know once you finish Angular, right? So these are all the basic things. First, you need to understand why they are here, right? Later, you will learn about them in various situations. And of course, I don't need to explain you about fav icon. I think all of you know this fav icon, fav icon.ico. Fav icon.ico. So usually fav icon is nothing but every website can have a favorite icon, fav icon.ico. Every website will have a favorite icon. That means an icon which is used, icon to use for bookmarking your application. So application in browser. When you bookmark your application in browser, an icon should come. And what the icon you want for the bookmarks, you can define that fav icon. Fav icon usually have .ico extension. And another important, you can see we have index.html. So we have index.html. And I think many of you know that. So this is the startup page for your application. So application starts with index page, index.html page. Application starts with index.html page. That means whenever your application is requested by client, starts with this page. Application starts with this page. So that means this is the first page. So this is the first page to be served. This is the first page to be served. When your application starts, the first page that you are going to see is this page. That means now you got a clarity. When we started this project, we have an initial screen coming in. We saw the first screen coming in. In the initial screen, actually, we saw an initial screen coming in. And that initial screen is actually coming from this index page. It is coming from index page. How this index page comes means what it provides, all that we will see. So let's run this and see. I will open this here. And ng server project is equal to Amazon. I am compiling this. Amazon lowercase, right? Yeah. So let's run this project. As I already told you that capitalization issues will be there when you are configuring these commands. Amazon is lowercase. Okay. So now we are starting with this project, right? So the first page that is going to be served to you is this index page. That means when you start Angular application, that Angular application starts with this index page. Yeah. Now, very important is when you requested this application, I will show you that it will finish. When you requested this application, now your application start compilation. It will compile. So your application starts the compilation. So it is going to start the compilation. Yeah, it will take time. So because lot of library is required, right? Now don't ask if it is taking so much time, then how you say Angular is fast. You are watching this from a developer side, not a client side. Am I right? Client side, building, debugging, testing, always it will take time. That means from a developer side, it will take time, right? So many people come with this doubt. Sir, you said Angular is fast, then it is taking 10 minutes for me to load. How it is fast? Right? The common thing they forget that they are watching this from the developer side. From the developer side, obviously it will take some time. From the developer side, obviously it will take some time, right? So why? Because compilation process. So how it is responding to the user is important for us, right? So here it is successful. It will take time, right? Now, once it is successfully compiled, when it is successfully compiled, now you can request this, and you can observe here. Here you will find an important point. Observe carefully. Here you are having main chunk, polyfills chunk, styles chunk. Actually, chunk is nothing but what is the chunk? Chunk means, the key point about the chunk is it is transcompiled code. This is the transcompiled code. A chunk refers to a transcompiled code. Usually transcompiled code, and chunk means it contains a combination of several files, means several modules. Several modules are combined and placed in one location. That is a chunk. We generally call it as a chunk. So now the chunks are transcompiled files. Transcompiled files. What are these files? Observe carefully. Main, polyfills, runtime, styles. Some files are present, and some vendor is also there. Actually, so how these are used, I will tell you. We will see that actually. What are these chunks? You can observe carefully below the index page. We have we have an index page. So this index page is coming. You can observe carefully now. I will open any browser. I will open any browser and localhost 4200. Then it will get this page. Amazon app is running. Actually, from where this is coming, this screen from where it is coming from index page. So let's go to index page. In the index page, you can see in the body section, it is using some component here. It is using some component here. In the index page, in the body section, it is using some component here. Right. Yeah. You people, some people who are on webcams, can you please turn off your webcams? Because already webcams are a lot of disturbance, and people are very much even afraid of watching you on webcam, because your avatars on webcams are very much complicated and very much disturbing avatars on your cams. So please turn off your cams. Huh? Right. Right. Please turn off your cams. It is distracting other people. They are complaining, right? Continuously, right? Okay, fine. If you are pleasing to watch, then they can watch you, but you are very much distracting them. They are very much afraid of your looks. That's the reason. Huh? Right. Right. Fine. So let's see now here in this page. This is the index page. This is the index page. It is coming with that index page and displaying that index page, right? Now I will go to this index page. You know where to make the change. In the body section, I will just keep a heading, and here I will just keep here. So welcome to Angular. And just I kept some here. So Amazon index page, something like this. And I save this and see to the live, and you can observe here, and you can see that is what you are watching there. That means the information that you see on your page, it is coming from this index. So it is coming from this index page. What you keep in this index page, that is what actually the first page to serve you. But generally, according to our architecture, we don't keep anything directly in the index page. We design through components, and we will keep those components in this index page. So by default, We have a component in app folder by name app, that is the component, app component. Later we are going to see how to create our own components. So here you can see we have an app component. Here we have an app component. Generally, app component has its own design, so its own template. Now, usually what you are watching is in the body section, a component is injected actually. How component is injected? By using a directive like app root. App root is the directive used for injecting app component. And due to that, this app root component is having some presentation. That presentation is coming here. That presentation is coming here. So we will not design directly inside index page. I hope everyone got a clarity. We will not design anything directly in the index page. We design a component first. In the component, we will keep all the presentation, and that component we will start. There can be multiple components, there can be nested components. That's all you will learn here. You can remove the component, you can just put some static information and you can test. So you can just test, right? You can remove that information, you can put some static information, you can test here. So index page is the startup page. So this is from where your application is starting with. And in that index page, how we keep the components, that we will see now. We are going to discuss all that points, right? Step by step, right? Okay, now important is here. After index, you can see there is a file main.ts. Main.ts. Actually, in any computer programming, so it is a very simple point. Everybody knows what is main. That means, so actually this is main is called as entry point. Am I right? It is called as entry point for your application. For your application. So the main entry point for your application. Actually, what happens is it compiles the application. It compiles the application. So with the JIT compiler, and bootstraps the application. I hope there is no confusion in understanding this sentence. What is meant by bootstrapping the application? What is meant by bootstrapping the application? Yesterday I showed you bootstrapping of application. So main.ts, it is the main entry point. Bootstrapping application. Bootstrapping the application. What is bootstrapping of application? Yesterday I told you about it. Remember the bootstrapping? Actually, I told you, if you remembered, bootstrapping, yeah, good. Bootstrapping is the process of converting the static DOM into dynamic. Am I right? It is the process of converting static DOM into dynamic. Right. You need to remember those important terms when you answer, because generally, so if you give a general normal answer, then obviously interviewer says that no, I am looking for the correct term, right? So that is the reason we should hit the technical term. That means static to dynamic. So converting the static DOM into dynamic DOM, that is what actually the concept of bootstrap. So main, actually you can say that main, it creates a chunk. It creates a chunk that compiles and converts the static DOM into dynamic. So it is done by using the help of the JIT compiler. I already told you, if you remembered, you can also use AOT compiler. You can also use AOT compiler. So have you remembered the difference between JIT compiler and AOT compiler? Have you remembered the difference between JIT compiler and AOT compiler? I told you about these two compilers, JIT compiler and AOT compiler. JIT compiler and AOT compiler. You remember them? So what is JIT compiler and AOT compiler? Yes. Yes. Not at ahead of time. Ahead of time. Right. So actually the process is you cannot say it is lazy loading or anything. Why? Because AOT compiler means it compiles all your application code. So before it sends to the browser, it compiles all your application code before it sends to the browser. After compilation, the chunks are sent to the browser. The sends are sent to the browser. That is AOT compiler. JIT compiler means what? JIT compiler means it will load all your chunks into browser and it will compile in browser. And compile before it goes to browser. These are the two things. JIT compiler will compile in browser and AOT compiler will compile before it goes to the browser. Understood? So you can use this advanced AOT compiler also. Right. Actually, when you are using this advanced compiler, that means actually we are serving this. You can see we are serving this. So we are serving this. And when you are serving this, generally, so what you should know is when you are serving the contents here. Yeah. When you are serving the content here, let's terminate this now. Let's terminate this. Control C to terminate. Control C to terminate your compiling. So, and yes, terminate. It's terminated. Now your application is no longer running. When I refresh now, it says cannot reach that site. So you can see cannot reach that page because you stopped the compile process. That means application stopped on server. Now we need to start on server. That means ng serve. So hyphen project is equal to Amazon hyphen AOT. This is the point we use, AOT. That means we are how to configure AOT compiler as the default compiler. I will tell you because now in the latest versions, AOT is used as a default compiler. And you can see that it is compiling all the code here. So it is compiling and building all the code here. And it is generating everything now. Now, what is the actual difference is generally the output is coming. So you inspect this here. So in this network category, F12, so you can see in the network category, you have this stop recording log and start recording log. Okay. And you make a request here. You can see it downloads all these files here. So all these files are downloaded and these files are responsible for controlling your application actually. It is responsible for controlling the application. Now AOT compiler is little bit faster. It is little bit faster in compiling and handling your interactions. It is little bit faster, right? This AOT compiler is little bit faster. Actually, you see, suppose I requested few times here. So you can observe here. Suppose it is taking here 7, 8, 9 milliseconds to load your content. DOM content loaded. At the bottom, you can see 7-8 milliseconds to load, and you can see transferred 3.1 MB resources. Transferred 3.1 MB resources. 9 requests, 3.1 MB resources, and it took complete finish time. That means how much time it has taken to finish loading and everything. It has taken 890 milliseconds. 890 milliseconds. So that is the time it has consumed. 890 milliseconds it has consumed. Actually, suppose I am configuring this. I am running this without AOT. So we build the solution, and without AOT we are doing it. I am not using any AOT here. So it is using a default JIT compiler action. If it is using a JIT compiler to compile your code and generate the code here. So it is using a JIT compiler to compile the code, and it will load that here. It will load that here into the page. It is loaded now, and observe here. So this time you can see it took almost 2 seconds to load. You have seen previously 7 milliseconds to load, and now 2 seconds to load. Means 780 milliseconds to load and 2 seconds to load. So a lot of difference is there. That means, so the time taken for loading your content and accessing and using it, it will be more better when you go with this AOT. I hope you observed that difference, everyone. Am I right? Have you observed? Later you will see. Later you will see how to enable, disable, which compiler we want. Only the point you need to understand is JIT compiler will load all the library into browser, and there it will compile according to the browsers. So AOT compiler will initially compile everything, and it will send only the chunks which can run directly in browser. They will not compile in browser. They will directly run in browser. That is what actually this compiler is. So, and important, in order to use AOT compiler, so you can define hyphen AOT. You can define hyphen AOT while using serve. Right? You can use hyphen AOT using serve. You can actually by default keep that as a AOT as a default compiler to compile. That we will see in settings. How do we configure that? So our application starts compiling from this main.ts. And another important file, we have polyfills. Why I am concentrating so much on these files? Because majority in interviews, the questions asked for people in Angular is related to these files only. In many interviews, you will face this. What is the purpose of main? What is the purpose of polyfills? What is polyfills? So why you need polyfills? What is AOT compiler? What is JIT compiler? These are all the questions asked, because when they ask questions relative to Angular environment, like Angular components, services and all, you can easily answer those questions because they are context based. Context based means everyone regularly learns them, so it is easy to answer. So even a fresher also can answer those questions when asked at experience level, right? That is the reason. So majority of your interviews will be concentrating the questions relative to this architecture. So which file is required, how it is different, what is the advantage of that file? These are all things we need to know. That's the reason we are discussing more about these individual files very much. And polyfills is a very common question you will see in interviews. Actually, a simple point is actually polyfills is nothing but it provides polyfill scripts. It will provide polyfill scripts for browser support. This is very important. Polyfill scripts for browser support. Actually, it uses differential technique. It uses differential loading technique. That means it loads legacy and modern scripts modern scripts according to browser. That is the ability of polyfills. That means from which browser the request is coming, that browser related supported script is generated, and it will provide that script to that browser. That means in order to run the application, so on different browsers, some compatibility issues will come. Polyfills is responsible for so generating the scripts which can be served for different requests. If request is coming from a legacy browser, then it will send a legacy library to it. So when it is coming from a modern browser, then it will allow to send modern scripts into it. And can you tell me what is a legacy browser? Can you tell me what is a legacy browser, and can you tell me what is a modern browser? So we have discussed that point also. You remember that what is a legacy browser, what is a modern browser? Legacy browser means any browser that supports you should not name the browser. Legacy browser means any browser that doesn't support advanced version of HTML and ES. Understood? That means legacy browser supports up to HTML4 and up to ES4. Modern browsers will support ES5 and HTML5, ES5 and higher versions, and HTML5. So that is what actually legacy and modern browsers, we discussed about that. And you can see here, so you can go to the polyfills. In the polyfills, you can see here, so it contains browser polyfills, and some options are here in the browser polyfills. That means for Internet Explorer 10 and 11, what files are required? It will import those files and it will use those files. For animations, what files are required? Some extra file is required for controlling the animations. And for every purpose, what additional files are required? So it will use them. It will import them and it will use them. Actually, by default, some configurations are present, and you can add some more configurations into them. So we can add some more configurations into the polyfills. Polyfills is responsible for identifying. You can see the current setup is for so-called evergreen browsers. So the last version of browsers that support automatically update themselves includes Safari greater than 10, Chrome greater than 55, including Opera, and Edge 13. So it will show all those options, Chrome on mobile. All right. That means this is browsers related files, scripts are generated by polyfills. So that is the purpose of actually polyfills. And obviously you have styles.css. Styles.css, it is nothing but it comprises of global styles. So that means the CSS files, that is the CSS code or imports, which you can use from any component, That means global CSS. Actually, every component have its own CSS. So that means for project, we can have some standard CSS. For example, suppose I go to styles.css. Here comes the global styles. Currently, my heading is displayed in this way. And here I'm adding wherever heading is there. That means I'm adding styles. I'm adding a style here. I'm configuring the style. That means wherever heading is there, I'm configuring some style. So I'm saying text align to center. I'm adding some style here. So background color, some dark cyan, okay. So dark cyan, okay, and some color, some say white. So I defined some styles here for heading. And in the index page, you can see that happening there. I haven't written this. I haven't written this in index page. These are not written in index page. These are added here. These are added in the global, and they are imported and used here. So that is what actually globally you want some effects. Globally you want some effects. So you can define them in this styles.css. Whatever you configure in this styles.css, they are globally available. Remember, every component can have its own individual styles. You can configure the global styles that is here. And one more option we are having is this test dot